We are live from Martha's Vineyard, Touch Talk Wellness, and we're here with some great friends from B1, and we're going to talk about clinical trials. So, we are live from Martha's Vineyard, Touch Talk Wellness, and we're here with some great friends from B1, and we're going to talk about clinical trials. So, we are live from Martha's Vineyard, Touch Talk Wellness.
One technical glitch here.
And we're with some great friends from B1, and we're going to talk about clinical trials.
For that.
Yeah, am I on?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for having us. So my name is Rochelle Williams Belazaire, and I help drive a program at B1 within our clinical operations side of the organization, referred to as COHERE. And we'll probably dig into that, the meaning of that a bit, but it's related to representative evidence generation and the importance of making sure that we have safety and efficacy profile that really captures the data of everyone impacted by cancer or by. Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. My name is Zoe Felicia Jones. I'm Associate Director of COHERE, so I'm her wing. I'm really focused on data analytics, really capturing data on who we are including in our trials, who we're not including, and why, and also using those insights as a roadmap for inclusion.
I love that, a roadmap for inclusion. What a concept.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Anjanette Elegant. I am the Senior Site and Community Engagement Lead here with B1. And my role is to just have those relationships and partnerships with our sites and networks that conduct our clinical trials. I maintain those strategic relationships, but also I have the opportunity to have those community engagement activities where we bring value to the community, into the communities that serve our patients and our networks and our sites. So I enjoy that role here at B1. And this is my team, so I bring it all to tie it in all together with our relationships and partnerships.
I love that. So let's break it down. You know, I always start with, start with words people can spell from a voice of trust. And we're here on Martha's Vineyard. Exactly what is a clinical trial? Now, people, you know, we have all this sort of cloud of Henrietta and the syphilis study and all these things, and people always say there's no trust in the system. I don't really find that when I talk to women. We did a research study 4 years ago, and we learned that the biggest issue, two issues: doctors don't invite us to trials, but secondly, I don't want to get a sugar pill. And I think there's a basic misunderstanding about cancer research and placebos. So I'm going to let you guys kind of explain that a little bit, and then I'll give you my ice cream example of how I explain it to people. But I think we should break it down. People are, the fear is there. It's really fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
But, you know, but how would you know what a clinical trial is?
Exactly. No, I'm excited to hear your version of the ice cream. But, you know, a lot of times I break it down. Okay, so B1, we're a cancer company, right? So we work to develop treatments and therapies for cancer care. But how do we come about those treatments and therapies if we don't do a research study, right? So that's what a clinical trial is.
That's
it's
a great definition.
Study. It is voluntary. It is something that you can opt in, out of. And it is something that no matter, you know, where you are in your journey, it may be for you, it may not be for you, right? It just depends. And so one of the things that we work really hard on is trying to empower communities and patients to make that decision on their own, but to have all the pieces that go into making that decision. I think when COVID happened, we started hearing the terms clinical trials kind of thrown around a lot. And so it was good in a way because it started to be something that, okay, we were hearing about, but then obviously there was a lot of misinformation around it as well. But at its most basic level, clinical trials are a research study so that we can understand how to fight cancer and create therapies and treatments for it. And to answer a little bit about the sugar pill or, some of the myths that go along with that. When it comes to cancer care, you're not necessarily going to you're going to receive standard of care versus a new treatment that we're developing.
Right, and what does standard of care mean? I think that's where a big disconnect is. People don't really understand what standard of care is.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so depending on what the disease or diagnosis is, there'll be standard medicines and treatments that have already been approved by the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration. So if something has already been approved, this is what your physician is thinking, okay, based on this diagnosis, based on previous protocol, this is what we would be giving you anyway. So it's either that versus a novel therapy that we're still working to develop.
For a new therapy, yeah, I mean, I think the way I explain it, and I love your explanation. I've never heard it explained that way before, which is great, but it's just research so we can get better drugs, right? So I explain standard of care is you get the ice cream, the chocolate syrup, the whipped cream, and the nuts. In a clinical trial, you get the ice cream, the chocolate syrup, the whipped cream, the nuts, and a cherry on top. Who doesn't want the cherry on top?
Mystery flavor.
Right,
Or mystery flavor.
mystery flavor, right, so you really get the best thing you're gonna get, right? You get the sundae, but maybe you get something different or something on top of it or different that could be a better thing. But we don't, but you're gonna get the best thing that we have, right? And the way I look at too is that you're gonna get a drug today that may not be available for 5 years.
Or 10.
Or 10 years, right? So you're getting the most advanced medicine we have. And we know as Black people, we are doing clinical trials every day because most of these drugs haven't been tested on our bodies. So I know the chemo that I took, I did TAC, you guys know what that is. The basic breast cancer drugs, they didn't work for me. My cancer came back. So that clinical trial on my body didn't work. So I had to go find a clinical trial that did work, and I'm here 15 years later. But I think that, we're saving lives with clinical trials. We know that people have better outcomes, and we're also getting a better quality of care.
Yeah.
And so when I had my regular treatment, I didn't get scanned for 3 months. So we didn't know it wasn't working. When I was on a clinical trial, I got scanned every 3 weeks. Right, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I do. Because when you're on a clinical trial, I always say you're getting white blood cells.
You are.
You are seen often, and I tell patients too, I've told patients before, there are times when you'll have your investigator, your principal investigators, the doctor that's performing the trial that's conducting the trial, you may have their cell number on speed dial in your phone.
Right.
Because it is so important when you are in a clinical trial that you can contact your physician, and also you have a whole team of people that they are laser focused on your care. You might have a research nurse, you might have a study coordinator, you have an entire study team that probably every Friday they have a meeting about your care, and they want to know how are you doing as a patient. So that's why I think it's critical for us to just do that research, find out if there are clinical trials available, ask your caregiver, find out there are places you can go, there are options that you have that we may get into later to discuss about clinical trials. But I think that's one thing about clinical trials is that you are getting that care that you described, that focus care that you wouldn't normally get, in state-of-the-art innovation that you normally wouldn't get until years later. So yeah, years later. So
and
I would say
even once the drug comes out, you may not get that.
That's
true. While the trial, we had a patient who used to say, I want the room today, not the McDonald's drive-through. Right, so you get Chris treatment. So you got both trials as the last resort, and it really isn't. It's really precision medicine, right? Can you speak to precision medicine and what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I go there, just making a note that there are regulations, right? There are patient rights as it relates to clinical trials. And so we have to be mindful of that when it comes to even the consenting process. the rights that patients have in that space to ask questions, ensure all their questions are answered, to ensure that all their options are being discussed with them and considered. And so in terms of regulatory authorities, we have the Food and Drug Administration that has a number of regulations associated with protection of patient rights on clinical trial. But you bring up precision oncology, and so at B1, we are laser focused on the clinical trial with there's a clinical trial opportunity. It's just really education and clinical trial, because in order for you to be empowered, you need to have information. In order for you to evolve in terms of your patient journey, you need to be able to have the bilateral conversations with your medical team. So let's talk about clinical trials in the cancer space and the evolution of precision oncology. And Ricky, you raised an excellent point. You know, prior to precision oncology coming to the forefront, and we've been in precision oncology space for about 2 decades now, right? Prior to that, you're having clinical trials. And of course, the research, the intent there is to learn more about cancer. It's also to develop better treatment options for cancer. Historically, that journey space, it would be standard of care, right? That's what you're going, that's what you're not seeing the benefits that you and your medical team had hoped for. You have to now think about another treatment option. Then those conversations about clinical trials can come to the forefront. What we're seeing in the precision oncology space is actually, right, that precision medicine. So oftentimes you may hear words about biomarker testing, right? Genetic testing. That's you having those different tests to learn more about yourself, what kind of genetic mutations you may have, family history, things of that nature. So now when you're moving to that precision oncology space, you're not looking at that one treatment fits all, which is where we historically have been in cancer research and cancer treatment. You're now moving into the space of, okay, well, let's understand what your genetic mutations are, what you're made up of, right? And then let's come up with a treatment option that's best suited for you. That is where we are in terms of precision oncology. And you'll often hear oncologists and other healthcare providers in this space saying, we often think about the clinical trial as a first treatment option, not when standard of care has not necessarily moved in the direction we want it to. Why? Because you're now bringing a patient to those molecular tumor boards or things of that nature. You're understanding that patient and you're actually matching them to that best treatment option. And sometimes that could be what is FDA approved. And sometimes it could be outside of that. It's not standard of care. And so maybe it's available within the context of the clinical trial.
So, you know, we talk about biomarkers. Nobody knows what that is. So I'll give you my definition of that. My patient, you know, archaic definition of that. I think biomarker that treat the way I just freckles on them. These little dots are little freckles that if you took a picture of it, it could be a little dot, but that little could mean something significant to your specific cancer. And I think we're looking for these markers on that cell to figure out what your cancer looks like and what's going to work best on that cancer cell in your body, right? And I think that's where precision medicine makes such a huge difference. We also know that Black people are not always invited to get that testing, that genetic testing to know your family history, or that biomarker testing to know what your biomarkers are. I mean, I think it happens often when you're metastatic and the doctor's butt is on the line. But I mean, we still have to be knowledgeable about that and be able to ask, wait a minute, should I get some testing to understand my cancer better? And stand up to the doctor and ask for it so that we're getting the best treatment.
I would agree with that completely, right? And then even if we don't, I love how you define biomarker testing. I think that's great. It's important information for whether you are on a journey, or maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, a loved one, or just generally speaking. So you have that information in advance prior to, right?
Yeah.
Say you may have to go down that journey. And so it is a thoughtful question with your medical team and ensuring that they're going to take the time to define and to discuss and make sure that you understand. There has to be, again, that level playing field. Otherwise, you're not part of that, your journey. And so
Right.
cancer doesn't define who you are. It is one chapter of your life, right? So we have to think about everything else that goes along with that journey and how you treat cancer, in terms of, we just had a whole wonderful discussion, you all, right, in terms of mental health. So
Yeah.
that has to be taken in consideration, that social network, that caregiver, all those different elements, have to be taken in consideration. Maybe other diseases or conditions that you have. And so being able to have that medical team that's willing to sit down with you and explain biomarker testing. Have you had any biomarker testing done? No. Okay, can we have,
Right.
is there an opportunity for that? I think it's critically, and then, we often hear, even from patient advocacy groups, the conversation of, and if they're not willing to have that conversation with you, is that the medical team that you want supporting you on that, on your fight and on your journey, and being mindful that you can have a second opinion and that you can go to where you feel most comfortable.
And you can fire them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You can fire them. You can fire
Yeah.
them. I mean, my doctor, she was a baby oncologist. She had only had 2 cases of triple negative and the woman died really fast. So she didn't really know what to do with me.
Mhm.
So she actually went with me for my second opinion to learn,
Oh,
which was really unusual. She was
Yes.
38. But we went to one of the best doctors in triple negative at the time. And she, so then she could kind of monitor my trial, but she still participated because she wanted to learn. Now, I don't think that happens very often, but still, I sort of gave her the chance not to get fired. I let her, you know what I mean? Because I felt sorry for her. I mean, like, you gotta learn this stuff. Like, I'm not gonna die here. So me and you, we're gonna work this out. What you got from me, and so, but I think that it's okay to fire your doctor. It's okay. And if your doctor feels some kind of way about you getting a second opinion, well, they're just gonna have to feel some kind of way, for sure.
You have to advocate for yourself.
You have to, and your family, you have to. Yeah. So do you think, how can we help people understand how to get this care? I mean, you know what I mean? If they're not, because when you have cancer, you're on fire, right? You're on fire and you don't know what to do. There's no handbook. And it's so funny because I still have the box. I have a box of all the papers that they gave me when I was diagnosed. I never read that stuff. Like, how am I gonna read? I couldn't read the words anyway. I couldn't understand anyway. It's like there's no one there except for like what we do in advocacy to help people prepare. But how can we help people know what to do when they're on fire in the moment when they know nothing? You know what I mean? And I think that's probably what you do in that community a little bit.
Yeah, right. I mean, we really like to start the process of learning about clinical trials before someone's on
Before they're sick,
fire,
right? That's why we're here. That's why we're here on Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what we try to do is we go into the community, have events before we even want to discuss a clinical trial with you. So we go in, we roll up our sleeves, we volunteer because we want to go into our communities and have a real relationship and not a transactional one. So we provide education and access. So yes, when things are on fire, we want our communities to be well educated and understand that they can advocate for themselves and then try to determine if they want to be in a clinical trial. And yes, we feel that some of the barriers have been access, have been where do I go? So start with your provider, just ask them, is there a clinical trial for me? Even before a diagnosis comes, there are tons of clinical
Right.
trials.
I'm so glad you said that.
A lot of different things, just not when you're sick. There's a lot of clinical trials. I was sharing just the other day that I had the opportunity to be in a clinical trial for jet lag, where it was $2,000. They were going to fly me to Paris for a week. But the caveat was that I stayed till I couldn't go to the Eiffel Tower, but they were going to give me a drug to see if my jet lag was going to improve while there. So, but I didn't meet inclusion criteria because my husband said no. You know, yeah, but it was a nice opportunity.
I would take a trade. I've done 10 trials, only
Mhm.
one for drugs, right?
Okay.
Because I signed up at Georgetown in DC and I'm like in their trial on their list.
Yeah.
So when they have a trial, so I've done trials on stress.
Yes.
As a survivor, I've done trials on wearing bracelets on my arm saying what happens to the chemicals in your body, on your body.
Mhm.
I've done all kinds of trials and I think everybody should be in the habit of doing that. And your local hospital, well, you could sign up to do it and they just call you and say, can you do this? They pay me $25, I get a gas card.
Yeah.
Whatever, and just try it. And the
Just
more
try it.
data we have on Black people, we just don't have any data right now. The number is 4% participation in breast cancer trials. It's even lower in other cancers. And we're talking about all cancers today. So
Yeah.
We want to do it though.
Yeah.
I've been on the ground. The National Association meeting last month, investigators, physicians, they want to be investigators and
Right.
conduct clinical trials, but a lot of them just don't know how to do it.
right. And there's
Yeah.
no handbook for them
Yeah.
either.
And
Right.
the National Medical Association is the largest
Yes.
network of Black physicians in the United States. And I heard it over and over again, several physicians, no one asked, I don't know how, what do I do? Because many of these practices don't have the infrastructure to conduct clinical trials. They usually need some sort of SMO type of model. And from what we found at B1, our community clinics, that's where our patients are.
Oh, yeah. We know 80% of patients are going to a community hospital. They're not going to
Absolutely.
Georgetown.
They are
They're
not.
not going to MD Anderson, they're going to Cook County Hospital, they're going to Grady Hospital, they're going to
Right.
DC General, whatever. So, but I think I've been talking to the NMA leadership this week and, we're gonna do a panel on that next year.
That'd be
On the
awesome.
Vineyard with them. Yeah, so to talk about how Black doctors can get more engaged in clinical trials
Yes.
and get support to do that work.
Yeah.
I mean, in my ideal world, we try to put a hug around on the science because, patients don't do clinical trials to advance science.
Right.
We do them because I did it because I wanted to see Haley graduate from Dartmouth.
Right.
We went for another birthday, for another. So I think we have to get that balance of understanding the science, but also, making it relevant to a patient, right?
And accessible.
And
Yeah.
accessible, yeah, we say, we're the science we've been waiting for, though. That's our tagline for our naturalist company.
Yeah.
We're the science we've been waiting for. If we don't do these clinical trials and do this work, we're gonna have continue to have these horrible mortality numbers with cancer and every disease, heart disease, all of them, right? So critical that we get into this place of peace about it, right?
Data matters. And the other.
Black data men.
Yes, absolutely, right? It's critically important. The other thing I'd add to that, right, is that every person should have the right to make that unbiased decision on what clinical trial that they want to participate,
Yeah.
right? So when you go back to the question of how do we support communities so they can learn about clinical trial and clinical trial opportunities, I think it's very important that pharmaceutical companies support the work of nonprofits, support the work of community-based organizations, and partner with health institutions, as well as support investigators, the next generation of healthcare leaders in this space. So, even today with the Touch Wellness Talks, we have a number of pharmaceutical companies that have, stood up to help support the important work that you all are doing in this
We're
space.
so
And
grateful.
that's how we do that, because it allows community to speak for community and for community to activate for community and for its ecosystem, right? We all
It
have to
is.
work together to figure out how we can do that in advanced science, and then also make sure that those novel treatments are available to everyone.
We're so grateful for this partnership. We're so grateful that you're here with us. And that's why we come here to the Vineyard, because people aren't really thinking about how a clinical trial works. So this is going to catch them off guard, make them talk about it maybe at their dinner table and learn a different thing that they hopefully will never need. But I mean, clearly they need it. We need to be doing clinical trials on anything.
Before we need them.
Long before we need them, even, Haley's dog, and my dog, the little heart pill that we give them to not get bitten, they are, Yeah, heart guard was in a clinical trial.
Yeah.
Concept,
Yeah.
right? So everything is in a trial and we need to be prepared. I mean, we need to just know about it and accept it. Right?
Well,
Right.
we'll either be on the trial or we'll be on it afterwards, right?
Well, yeah, and
When we
and
need
it'll
it.
still be a trial in our bodies.
Exactly.
Because not enough Black people were in the original trial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like either you're doing it willingly or
Or
you're
you're
doing
doing
it when you really
Right,
need it.
when you really- Right. So how do we encourage people, because we know the number one reason why we're not participating, at least in the breast space, is doctors don't invite us.
Mhm.
And I can't change racist doctors. Or institutions. I can't change illicit bias. But what I can do, what we can do together is help Black people be informed, help Black people be informed.
Yeah.
You know, like, is there any, you know?
Yeah.
go ahead.
So we kind of talked about COHERE, and COHERE stands for Collaborative Operations for Health Engagement, Representation, and Enrollment.
Say that again.
Collaborative Operations for Health Engagement, Representation, and Enrollment. So the first key word there is collaborative.
Yeah.
Right? And so we absolutely look at this as an ecosystem. It's an operational framework within B1. So what is that? The work is not tied to any one particular team or group. We happen to be here today, but it's an operational framework. And so everyone across the organization leverages this framework to make sure that we are always putting patients first, and we're understanding that access begins before enrollment. So when you think about that clinical trial journey, there are critical steps across that journey, from it being in the lab, from doing PDX models, right, the translation science, all the way to the dissemination of the data, right? And you have to ensure that you're doing it collaboratively. So the work that we do, we're always making sure that we're doing it together with communities and not for communities. And so we talk about even the clinical trial education piece, right? And we shared with you, we have been talking about breast cancer awareness, clinical trial education within that space. And we did not have a breast cancer asset even at the time. The important thing is that people have that education, they have that information, they have that knowledge. Was it maybe in the early 2000s, you remember at health institution and hospital, you guys may recall that doctors were wearing buttons, asking about clinical trials. Right? A majority of my career was on the site side.
Yeah, that was Nadine Barrett's campaign. We know Dr. Nadine, we love her.
Yes, we love her, right?
Love her.
And so it was that element of asking about clinical trials. So making sure that we're holding health institutions and healthcare providers accountable to talk about the clinical trial. But Rick, you also raised the incredible point of we can't guarantee that those conversations are going to happen.
Yeah,
And so
we know they're not.
right. And so the COHERE framework is also built around, okay, so how do we empower communities? How do we empower patients so that they feel they can go and have those informed medical decisions together with their healthcare team? And so, you know, we're working very closely with communities as well as with health institutions and the entire ecosystem within a health institution. It's not going to be just your principal investigator, to Dr. Elgin's point. It's going to be your clinical research coordinator. It's going to be your social worker. It's going to be your research nurse. It's these many individuals to tell communities, to have patients know the questions to ask. And you may not even understand the full context or depth of that question, right? But these are the questions that you want to ask on various elements of that clinical trial journey, and that your medical team should be coming with you and answering those questions for you.
And we provide those questions on our website.
Right.
You know, and we also have navigators. So, you know, our navigators are there to support clinical trials. So when a patient goes into a trial, we help guide them, match them into a trial. And then we have 24/7 Black navigators who have the disease. So they're breast cancer survivors. We have Alzheimer's, you know, it's the caregivers. We have diabetes, you know, nurses with diabetes, but we try to provide care based on personal experience. I have lived experience with this disease. And so I can talk the talk because I've walked it.
Right.
And that's so important. So we can support your science with the mental wellness, the mental health. We call Dr. Wendy when we need her and pull her into that. But we provide all of that emotional support to support the patient through it. And you know, you guys, so I don't know if you ever heard me tell my favorite story about clinical trials. So if I had a lot of money, and I don't, especially now that we bought a house on the Vineyard. I would build a house in every Black neighborhood, like a beautiful Victorian house where you walk down the street, you open the wrought iron gate, you walk up on the porch, the beautiful Black grandmother gives you a hug, takes your 3 kids into the playroom, feeds them spaghetti, takes you into the treatment room, sits you down in a cushy chair, gives you a blanket that she crocheted, a cup of tea with mint from your garden, turns on Luther Vandross, and gives you the shot.
I love it.
That is beautiful.
So, but that's what we're trying to bring.
Right.
We put the hug around the science. We want people to feel comfortable, even more comfortable than they are in their
Mhm.
doctor situation, where they're in that robe with their butt hanging out, right? And they're uncomfortable and it's miserable and it's scary and no one looks like that.
Yeah.
So if we have, so that's why we need to bring trials to the community. You know, let's buy the house on Martha's Vineyard that does that clinical trial. You know what I mean? Let's buy the house in Detroit, DC, where people can go and feel the love that they're getting with this science and do the science work. So one day, someday, I haven't given up on that dream.
I love that vision because you hit on so many elements, so many critical elements. And when we think about clinical trials, we are laser focused, I think, just as an entity, right? A large community to say clinical trial opportunity, you know, biomarker testing, okay, now you've been enrolled on a clinical trial.
Yeah.
That's just the very beginning.
That's just the very
And that
beginning.
is such a journey even to just to get
It is,
there.
just to get through the
Yeah.
inclusion criteria.
Right.
And there's critical data, right, that shows the benefits on one's health when they're with their social network,
Yes,
right? So that's why when we talk about those community clinics and making sure that we are selecting health institutions and sites where patients are with their community and with their social networks. I mean, the journey to travel to that large academic research organization, which is outstanding in its own right, because they are developing novel treatments and technologies themselves, but it's that just the commute time to get there,
Right,
right?
right.
And to get back. And so how do we ensure that the option, you have the option of whether you want to travel into the city, what if you live rural, right? What about
Right,
that,
right.
right? And then also just being able to be part of your social network. There's so
Yeah.
many things that one has to go through on that cancer journey. Being able to have a person beside you that can just take the notes or just grab
Never
these
go alone,
action items.
never go
So,
alone, never
right,
go alone,
right,
never go alone
Right.
to the doctor.
Right.
And we'll FaceTime with, I've FaceTime many people in doctor's office. I've been thrown out of a couple. And I'm cool with that. But I mean, never go alone. I think you need someone who understand it, especially in the clinical trial, just signing the document that you have to sign. That 30-page thing where, you know, we just close your eyes and sign it.
Yeah.
And your life away is really to protect you. You know, that's what our navigators spend a lot of time explaining that informed consent to the husband, to the daughters, to the kids, to the grandma.
Right.
So they feel they can explain it and say, it's just to protect you.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to explain a little bit about informed consent? Who knows what an informed consent is? Anybody? Yeah. I know, go ahead.
Informed consent. You wanna go? So informed consent. First, you get recruited into a trial. So someone approaches you and says, hey, we have a trial, you know, they give you kind of the gist of what it is. If you're interested, they will give you more information, which is your informed consent. It's usually pretty lengthy, but I know there is a lot of work being done to condense informed consents and to try to kind of make sure that they're written in a language that we can all understand. But essentially,
We rewrite some.
right, and so do we. But essentially it's breaking down what you should expect from participating in this trial, from start all the way to the finish, listing out what are the risks, what are the pros, what are the cons, kind of just what the entire journey will look like, and also explaining to you your rights, which we were talking about earlier. Your right to ask questions, your right to say, no, you know what, I don't think I want to do this, or you know what,
Drop out. you know, if you're not feeling it.
To say, you know what, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be, or it's not for
Yeah.
me. So it's going through all of it. At the very end, there's always contact information too, to Dr. Elegant's point, where you know how to contact your study coordinator, you know how to contact the PI. Whether there's a phone number, an email, there's ways for you to get in contact with somebody.
24 hours.
24-hour day. And it's knowing that you're agreeing to be completely monitored in terms of your care. Anything
Yeah.
like that's please add on.
No, I think that's good, but it's really, it's a scary document because it's usually a lot of
is.
pages, but
Yeah.
it's really to protect you, and I think that it's often presented when the patient's on fire. As I say,
Right.
when you're in a rush, you gotta make a decision today, boom, are you doing this or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
One other thing I wanted to talk about, it wasn't kind of on the question list, is the different phases of clinical trials. So we're, I'm trying to keep Black people from dying. That's my mission in life. It's my purpose. And so we're doing trials there's 3 phases of trials, and I'll let you guys help. I can give you my archaic definition of that as well. But I think that we're seeing people being recruited now for phase 3 trials. And to me, and that's where the biggest numbers of trial recruiting are, right in the phase 3. And we'll explain this in a minute, you guys, but the drug is in the birth canal by then. So if it wasn't safe for Black bodies, or it wasn't, the efficacy and the dosing wasn't tested on Black bodies before then, they're helping us, and I'm happy to do that participation, but we need to be participating in phase 1 and 2 trials. So I'll give my definition, you guys can correct. So phase 1 trials are basically a small number. It could be 15 people, maybe 20 people, but it's to test the drug for safety. So it's the first time it's been in humans to test for safety. Phase 2 is testing for efficacy and dosing. So how much do we give? Safety dose, and still safety, but how much do you give, right? And then phase 3, it's testing against the standard of care. And so we need all those 3 phases to happen. But to me, if the Black bodies aren't in the safety part, we don't know if it's safe. So I think Black people need to be recruited at every phase of development. So help me out with my science. I might screw it up.
No, I think you described that perfectly.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked earlier about regulatory bodies, right? And the regulations around that. Well, in 2022, the FDA issued guidance on referred to diversity.
But for phase 3 trials.
And so it is for phase 2 and 3 trials. And there's back and forth on the FDA diversity guidance, whether it's physically available or not, but we all know from the Omnibus Act that it's written into law, right? In terms of the data that we should be collecting. And so you're often going to find recruitment efforts for the phase 2 and the phase 3 built off of the premise of diversity action plans. Again, I think what's beautiful about that being one coherent operational framework as we start with, if it's the first time we are engaging with a disease or an indication, we're really leading with the science. And so that's the epidemiology data.
Say that, explain what that means.
Epidemiology data. And so that is, in layman's terms, that is understanding, say you have a disease or indication. We'll just take colon cancer as an example. Well, there are a number of data scientists, statisticians that are looking at this information. They're collecting data via surveys, via different forums across the United States of America, and they're able to understand incidence data, which is new cases of colon cancer across the United States, and prevalence data as well, right? And so that's epidemiology, right. I think, on the spot, how I can best describe it in layman's terms. And so you really want to anchor around that science. Where are the patients located, right? You have clinical trial opportunities and they are condensed and predominant in a certain area, but those that are most impacted by the disease are located geographically somewhere else. Right. How are they actually getting access to that? Then you have to think about it from the safety and efficacy of that molecule that you're developing, right? That drug that you're developing. And so you want to have that information much earlier on. Right. So when we are exploring a disease or an indication for the first time, we are anchored around that epidemiology data. So we are charging ourselves to understand as it relates to race, as it relates to ethnicity, as it relates to sex, as it relates to age, who is the most impacted, right? There's a spectrum of that, right? And where are they geographically located? So to your point, when you get to that phase 2 and phase 3, should not be new information in terms of the access barriers, in terms of the social drivers, right? This should be information that you have, that you're understanding is
tested that-
much
that
further,
stuff,
you're a
yeah.
bigger.
But you guys are unique in that. I don't think every pharma company is doing that level of discipline in terms of, you know, finding the people where they are. I think the other thing that I love that you guys are unique about too is inclusionary data. So that means who can be included in the trial. So do you have diabetes? Do you have high blood pressure? What's your BMI? And I think a lot of the bigger pharma companies basically take that inclusion data that they've used for the last 20 years and just copy paste it into the next document. And they're not really thinking about who that patient is. And if you're Black in America, you probably have high blood pressure. If you're Black in America, their chances are you've got diabetes somewhere in your family. And so if we're not including the real people and that really are going to get cancer in the trial, it's not real.
And that's where you guys can speak to as well, right? We have to take that collective approach from an industry perspective in terms of looking at that inclusion exclusion criteria. I won't name it off completely off the top of my head, but there are a number of societies and organizations, I will say, that a number of different pharma companies have been involved in, right? To say, how do we address that inclusion exclusion criteria? How do we leverage and lean on the insights and expertise from communities, from patient advocates, from survivors, right? So that we can do a better job proactively in terms of addressing the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So that is being looked at in different ways and in different avenues, I think, across the industry.
And I would add to that, that one phase we didn't talk about is phase 4.
Phase 4, thank you.
Right.
All the data, yeah.
Where we're now looking to see what does it look like for a person who has all these other comorbidities or pertains to all these other categories. Because that also gives us information that is critical for us to continue to make, you know, different decisions on other treatment options. So I think, I think that's when we get to see, like, what does it look like when a patient isn't in a trial any longer and is just a regular person living their lives and they have diabetes, high blood pressure,
and 3 kids,
eating whatever they want, 3 kids,
Right.
a husband, or not having a husband,
right?
or not having a village. What does that look like when it's not this sterile environment where we're controlling every variable?
Yeah, but they're still getting the benefit of a drug that may not be available.
Exactly.
Or that's brand new.
Or that's when we find out what we need to tweak.
What we need to tweak, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say about phase 1 studies that many people may not realize is those studies are done on healthy people.
Unhealthy people.
Healthy patients.
Hello.
So it's usually healthy patients that, because it is safety. So, and a lot of times it's done in a hospital or clinical setting, overnight. And it would be nice to have some data on, Black communities and other communities and as to those phase 1 trials, but those are challenging studies.
Yeah, so we have a blessing, we have a video about her. She was on our 1 week trial site, Karen Peterson. She was given a 3% chance of survival of metastatic TNBC, and she went and fought for herself. She found a phase 1 trial that wasn't even for breast cancer, and she did it, and she's 12 years out.
Wow.
She had to find herself, she didn't have help, and so she does a lot of recruiting for trials in the New York area. Karen's Club is her organization, and we work with her a lot, but she's one of our blessees, and she was a phase 1 trial, and she would have died, and she's here, you know, so we know it's, I mean, I'm here, you know, we're saving lives, and we have to do this work.
That's beautiful. And I think it's important to make sure we make that distinction that you know, you can have your preclinical and you can have your clinical.
Yeah.
So I think majority of our conversations have been in the clinical treatment space.
Yes.
And then you have really like what Dr. Allen's
Yeah.
referring to, maybe the observation.
That's a
of
big
kind of
word. What is
healthy
clinical
volunteers.
space? Explain what's
Clinical meaning like treatment,
Yes.
treatment without,
Thank you.
right? Interventions,
Yeah.
times I will hear that. And then you have preclinical, which is more observational, maybe healthy volunteers or things of that.
Yeah. Right. Right, we have to do all the work, and we are the science we've been waiting for. I can't stress that enough, that we all should go home and get in a clinical trial. We should all take somebody from your family and get in a clinical trial. We can help you find one. You know, we have our new navigating trials site, navtrials.com. You go find a trial for anything. And we put a hug around clinicaltrials.gov, because it's like going to hell, that place. And so we make it better and make it, and we support you with navigation through the process. I think that was.
A lot of us.
So, try to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we always say we're over here, where I say, you know, it doesn't matter to us if you're in our clinical trial. We just want you to find the right clinical trial that works for you.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here. That's why we want to provide the education and the access. Patients can advocate for what they need.
I love that. I love that. So what gives you hope for the future? Especially for cancer, it sucks.
Yeah. So we have something we call our wall of hope, where sometimes we go out to community events and we have people share with us kind of what gives them hope or who they fight for. And for mine, I always kind of think back of my family members that have, fought cancer, whether it's my grandfather who passed, or whether it's my uncle who got diagnosed last week, or, whatever it is, it's like, I think of them and I'm like, this is why I do the work that I do, to make sure that at least we know it's an option, awareness, like education about it. And like we said earlier, like any kind of clinical trial, get comfortable knowing about it, understanding it long before you need it to save your life.
Yeah. Awesome.
For me, hope is not being here, having to talk about cancer anymore.
Putting ourselves out of a job, man.
Yeah,
Right?
seriously.
There'll be plenty other things to do, right?
Right.
I think we're
Let's get
getting
fired
so
today.
close. Yeah, I think we're getting so close that we won't have these discussions anymore. It'll be as simple as just going, oh, we found something, it looked strange, we did something, and now it's gone.
It's gone. We fixed it.
We fixed it.
That's my hope for Jetson, my grandbaby. I hope they never have to deal with this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fired.
yeah. I think we're getting
All right,
there.
all right.
Yeah.
Girl, I'll take your vote.
Yeah.
I think my hope is just how we're seeing science advance in the space.
Yeah.
I think it's really, truly, incredibly outstanding where we are in terms of precision oncology. To say that we can get to a space today, right? And this is not speaking in terms of pharma, but think about your health institution, right? Your cancer centers, that you can take one patient and hold an entire discussion, hour-long discussion, pulling up blood results, urine results, right? DNA results, tissue results on this one individual, and learning so much about them. I mean, we're moving into this place of individualized, right? Personalized medicine, right? And then being able to say, okay, this is probably going to be the better treatment option for this individual, but also just in terms of the advancement of science, that we are able to understand cancer and bringing it down to a scale that we've never been able to explore before, to really truly understand the cancer cell itself, but also how the cancer cell has been evolving. That is outstanding.
That is outstanding.
So I geek out on that.
I love that. I love that. So, I'm like a shoe diva, okay, we know this. And so I think online shoe shopping made shoe shopping so much better. Right? Because I would go to Nordstrom, I walk around, I find the shoe I liked, say that, then I have to take 10 minutes to find a salesperson. Then I say, can you go get me this in my size? They go into that black hole behind that door. 30 minutes go by and you come back, we don't have your stuff. And I walk home mad. Now I can go online, I can put in, I want this color, this hue, this whatever, all my personal specifications, my biomarkers, my whatever, about exactly what shoe I want, and they'll give me a shoe.
Yeah.
That fits, that's the color I want, right? And to me, that's how I think about it, right? So,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
my ridiculous
I love it.
analogy, right?
Yeah.
But
At first I was trying to say,
where's she going?
But I'm with you. completely.
Right,
I'll be
right.
back.
They get the exact thing I want.
Yeah.
You know exactly, so,
I'll be there.
right?
Yeah.
And I would, you know, it rarely comes back that there's nothing.
Right.
So I'm hoping that's what you do for cancer. You go online, you figure out, you know, this is exactly what I need for my body right now, for my disease in this moment. So thank you for your work. You guys have anything else you want to say that I missed? In this conversation? We're so glad you're here. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
We're glad you're
Get
here.
on the clinical trial. This is full circle for me, right? Because I grew up in Boston. So to now back here and having an opportunity to activate the community is really outstanding.
So let's do it again. Let's do it some more, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like we can't talk about this enough. And I want everybody who's watching, listening, whatever, go home. You're gonna cook dinner tonight or have it somewhere. Talk to your family, talk about a trial. When you go back to your homes or whatever, call your local cancer center, put your name on a list. It's not hard. We can help you do it. Call me, you know how to reach me, Ricky@touchbbca.org. I will find something for you and we'll advance science together.
And go to B1 Clinical Trials.
And go to be one clinical trials. Great, we'll advance science together. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Turn off. Thank you guys.